one of the key questions that I get asked all the time is, Cam, isn't it just another job? Isn't it going to be too intense? Have you really got the time to actually do this? And I think you just hit the nail on the head. Hi, it's Cam Dovedi from Premier Property, and joining me today is James Weatherby and Kathrine Ryan from Kigo. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, really excited. All about service accommodation and apartments and houses and renting out short term. Very hot topic right now. How are you finding the market? How are you finding people, investors? Are they lining towards these types of short-term accommodation types of projects? What are you finding?
Well, I've been at Kigo now for the last 3.5 years, and even in that short amount of time, I've seen a real increase in serviced accommodation, in particular in the UK market, because we're a global company, but serviced accommodation for UK is really, really taking off. Particularly now, there's a lot of education out there, there's a lot of opportunities for scaling very quickly, revenue, and just building on brands. There's a lot more opportunity, more products, more marketing available to people.
And how about you, James? What's your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, I think to add to what Kathrine has said, we're seeing a massive increase in what we've seen since we started. I started about 3 years ago as well, same as Kathrine. We see a massive variety of different backgrounds, people getting into service accommodation. What's really interesting is that people getting into it aren't just, say, property investors, they're people who are teachers, or essentially it's like a second job for them to start off with, but they've got a massive passion about getting involved into it. What's really encouraging for us is they're very interested in the educational side of it. It's not just, I want to make money and I want to do this, but I'm really focused on how I can deliver the best service to guests. So I think it's the conversations that we have are very much focused around that.
Yeah, I get you. And at Premier Property, as you know, we train people as well. We're service accommodation providers, and because of this, we train people. And you're right, they're just normal people.
Yeah.
Normal people looking for a second income. And when they get a flavour for it, some of them are actually going full time. Some people come along and they're actually wanting to sort of jump full throttle into it full time. So interesting you say that. So it kind of busts the myth, doesn't it, out there that service accommodation can be difficult, it can be quite intense. Actually, with a system in place, is what we find at Premier Property, that you can make service accommodation really work. I mean, what do you think is the lure of service accommodation? Why do people want to get into service accommodation type of strategies in property, do you think?
I think it's a good question. I think it's accessible at the moment, and I think there's a lot of interest in it. I think things like the success of Airbnb and things like that in terms of the media attention and what it's done in a positive way has really shown people what they can do. There is a monetary aspect to it, so people see, okay, like you said, they can finance in terms of a second job and things like that. They can really help themselves when it comes to it. So I think you've got that side of it. You've got the fact that it's accessible to do, and you've got the fact that there's so many courses and opportunities available for people to get involved in.
That's so true. I mean, one of the things that we love about service accommodation is that your entry level is so low. You can really get in. So people out there who think they can't be investing or they can't become entrepreneurs, actually, we're finding this particular strategy really allows people to actually be jumping into something and creating a business for themselves, or within property. I suppose I'm a living proof of this. When I started out, I didn't have a lot of money. Actually, it was probably minus figures in my younger days, right? So we had to work at that. So now it's about scaling a business, which I suppose is another aspect, isn't it? Yeah. Scaling a business. What are your thoughts on that, Kathrine?
I think that from what we know of the market, from our clients as well, and just even people who we're speaking to every day who maybe aren't clients right now, the goal is to scale, and scale as quickly and smoothly as possible. In the UK, there's quite a unique and successful model out there that we were talking about earlier, which is the rent-to-rent, rent-to-SA model. Whereas what we see in other markets that we work in, they do a fixed rate. They do a percentage model with the owners and landlords, so they're doing a revenue share. So we've seen that with the rent-to-rent, rent-to-SA, it's a very easy way to scale quickly. you can get a lot of properties, you're not purchasing them yourself, you're not taking on that risk. And also if you're working with a good landlord you're working well for them, they're working equally well for you as well. If they've got more than one property themselves, it's often a very easy in to increasing your own portfolio. I think something that we've learned from our clients as well is it's really knowing where to invest, where to get those properties. And again, it's having the systems behind you to allow you to do that, to have that data available so you can drive your business forward with the right data behind those decisions.
So very exciting key points you picked up with there, Kathrine. I'll pick up there with what you just shared there. So talking about the models. So shall we go a little bit deeper on the different types of models out there? So you mentioned 3, right? So for our audience listening in right now, people that actually want to move forward right now, thinking about this and moving forward, would you just outline those 3 models?
Yes, so we have a lot of clients in the UK who do rent-to-rent model and rent-to-SA, rent-to-serviced accommodation, whereby it's a guaranteed fixed monthly rate with the owner or landlord. Okay, so regardless of your occupancy, your landlord is getting a fixed amount from you. So there is that pressure there on yourself to make that revenue. And then the other model that we see is where you take a management fee. So tends to be in the industry 15 to 20, 25%, depending on the service you offer as property managers. So your owners, your landlords are getting a share of that revenue rather than a fixed monthly. And obviously that comes with other pressures, because if you're doing it in a very seasonal market, you still have to make sure that you're really maximising on those high occupancy months in order for you to be able to make your money.
Yeah, so that's a number of ways that you can do this. You talk about pressures. I mean, I agree. There's things that we've got to do. There's effort that you got to put in. I suppose it's kind of weighing it out for people, isn't it? Where people working full time, working for someone else. Monday to Friday usually, or sometimes even the weekends. Working from all the hours from 7 a.m. to 7 at night. Working all those hours and having all those pressures. Whereas I suppose what I like about service accommodation is actually it's yours. It's actually your business. You control it. You do it how you want to do it. Sometimes we find the effort, you put a little bit more effort in. Yet when you think about it, it tends to be quite gentle effort. And because you're doing it for yourself and it's so exciting, you're entrepreneurs, your own business, you don't mind putting the effort in. You don't really mind putting the hours in because it's your baby, isn't it? And like you say, you can scale it. And I totally agree with about the system. So tell us a bit more. Obviously, you're all about systems. You're at Kigo. Tell me a bit more about systems. James, do you want to share something more about systems?
Well, systems just in general, like talking about, the way we see it is, in terms of like acquiring a property, that's the first step, right? And then when you think about the system, the way I like to think about it is, everyone is following the same sort of process. Everyone has to do the same sort of things. Everyone has to talk to the guests. Everyone has to get bookings. Everyone has to communicate with the cleaners. Everyone has to organise like what to do. Everyone has to deal with their advertising. Like, everyone has to handle payments. Everyone has to manage their accounts. All of these things are done by everyone if you want to be successful. Having a system in place and being able to do that in a structured way, having a strategy about it, being proactive and not just reacting to things that come in is what's going to make you successful.
Very interesting to say that, because that is the key, isn't it? What you just said there. Because, and also, training thousands of people, going through various seminars. And, one of the key questions that I get asked all the time is, Cam, isn't it just another job? Isn't it going to be too intense? Have you really got the time to actually do this? And I think you just hit the nail on the head. If you've got that system, you're able to do it, right?
Exactly. You're doing it anyway, right? So it's like, if you want to spend a few minutes, say a stitch in time saves 9, right? So you're responding to a few like queries here or there, or you're setting up and you're investing that time up front to be able to put into work some like really solid foundations to be able to run your business. And for me, that's what systems are about. It's not necessarily like automating a million things at once, but it's about making sure that foundation is really solid for your business so you can respond to these things, so you can plan ahead and you can just be a bit prepared. Ultimately, and the people that we speak to all the time, what they're doing, as Kathrine said before, is that they're starting like this, but they're looking at growing.
Yes.
You can't do that if you don't have a system in place. Or you can, but the amount of people you're going to have to hire and do these things manually is just going to take over. So that's what systems and processes and everything's about.
And of the people we speak to who aren't starting up but maybe have been running 2 years, 3 years, 5 plus, the number one thing they always say to us is we need time back. We need more time back for us because you know, everyone's got their own business plans. So whether it's over the last 3 years that they've been in business, they haven't necessarily focused on direct marketing, direct bookings, their own website, their own brand. That takes up a huge amount of time in itself, on top of running all the other sides of the business, having a private life as well, family life, whatever else you're doing. And just being able to really use your system to take a lot of the jobs that, as you said, you'd be doing manually or hiring someone else to do, which is a huge expense in itself.
Yes.
Just let the system do that, rely on that, have the peace of mind that, okay, they're still being done, just not manually by me. You can then crack on with all the other things you need to do, which is all working towards building your business and taking you to that next step.
Yeah, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
I personally find that so exciting, you know, just watching that, you know, that small step you take, one step at a time, you know, and then scaling it if that's what you wish to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, systems. I mean, you know, you're all about systems, so Kigo specifically is a system. So what would you say is your number one tip for people, entrepreneurs, on why they should use a system like Kigo?
So I'd say my number one thing, and I'm not necessarily a fan of lists all the time because I think you're putting priorities on different things. I think as a business, what you've got to think about is holistically what's important to you. And a system like Kigo, that's exactly what we're aiming to achieve. It's an all-in-one system.
What do I mean? So
what we mean by that is, no, it's a good point. I can just say that and there we go. But the point is that there's many different things that we do, and sometimes you hear about, oh, this is a channel manager and that's a channel manager, and that's something that we do, and that's a very important part of what we do. But that's one part of many of the things.
Okay.
So you take a look at Kigo, you take a look at Kigo Marketplace, and it's about how you communicate with the guests, how you manage your cleaners, how you handle your payments, how you manage your rates, and how you adjust them, your website, your advertising, all of these sort of things. And having them in one central place is really fundamental as far as I'm concerned. We speak to people that say, they talk to guests via text message or WhatsApp and things like this, and at the moment in the time it sounds okay, but then you look back over 6 months and it becomes a nightmare because it's just, I mean, I can't like find a text from 6 months ago and things like this. So as a business, if you want to be really professional, you've got to have a really solid foundation in place and a business in place that just makes sense. Having different disparate systems aren't necessarily talking to each other is ultimately it's very shaky. So for me, you know, to sort of answer your question in a long way, it's the fact that everything's tied in together is what makes it really whole in that respect.
What's your top tip here, Kathrine?
For me, it's really about, well, there's lots of things, but for me, something I really take away as being extremely important, and it's only going to become more and more important, is the guest experience and the way Kigo handles that. Everything from legal sides, you know, getting in photo IDs, GDPR compliance, to actually keeping the personal touch with your guests in a time where, you know, we're very hands-off guests as well. Not everyone wants to have the personal touches in face-to-face or phone calls. You know, if you think about it, you find your accommodation online, you book it online, pay for it online, you might do self-check-in. So there's a point where you might never, ever, ever see your guests, but people still need that personal touch. You as a property manager don't have time to invest sitting there, sending everyone nice little messages, how are you, having a nice time, do you need me, do you need this, do you need that? So it's really taking the best of hospitality, which is the personal touch guest experience, and marrying it up with the best of technology, which in the Kigo case is guest experience.
I really like that point. So really, a couple of really good points there, and so true. I mean, even at Premier Property, we're all about you know, that personal touch, which people love that, don't they? They love the authenticity, just organic. You know, it's just real, isn't it? So my top tip about Kigo, because obviously we use Kigo at Premier Property as well, and I would say my top tip really is amalgamation of what you guys have just said there, which is
I think there's a huge opportunity out there now, as you said. Also, there's been a huge shift since OTAs like Airbnb have come along. You know, they're still relatively new into this industry compared to hotels. And it has shifted the entire way that people book short term.